I would really love to welcome you all to this symposium on professional burnout. I thank you so much for coming today. This is a follow-up from the wonderful mental health plenary that was given last year, 2023, at the North American CF meeting by Bev Smith, Anna Georgiopoulos, and Shayna Blair. So today we have a very special invited speaker, Dr. Neha Sangwan, and after that we will have our presentations. And I would like to introduce Dr. Amit Uller, who is at Boston Children's Hospital. He's a pulmonologist working in CF for many years and knows Dr. Sangwan. So it's wonderful to be able to turn it over to him for the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Being from Boston, I'm introducing everybody at every session. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, and I want to thank my dear friend, Dr. Sangwan. The plenary session last year was a great start. A continuation of our discussion. I know all of us as providers are being stressed and pushed. And not all of us have somebody who they can call. And when I'm struggling, I have Neha to call and to ask her to just sort of talk me down from the ledge to make sure I'm not quitting this profession I love so much, maybe sooner than I would otherwise. And because we're all feeling it, and as patients are doing better in some ways, we need to find other revenue streams for us as physicians, I'm sure as other providers as well. So this is something I know that we're all, struggling with, and then also the complexities of medicine these days. It's good to have that kind of support. And when I knew Neha, we went to high school together, and she was planning on becoming an engineer, actually she was trained as a biomedical engineer, but then she did choose a profession in medicine and served as an internist or practiced as an internist for many years. And then, she's going to tell her story, and hopefully you'll be interacting with her. But then she went a whole different route. And when I reconnected with her, I'm like, oh my God, look at all the incredible things that you're doing. And she's become an entrepreneur, speaker, author. She's been on the TEDx stage multiple times, and she has, she's published, and so I don't want to take up too much time, but I will say that she's doing consultations with Mass General Brigham, with Stanford and Google and Apple and American Express. So she's, talking to, big groups of people on innovative ways of trying to prevent burnout and understanding that it's not because of what we're doing, and it's really the system that we're working in. So my dear friend, Dr. Neha Sangwan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you for that warm welcome. When does someone from high school get to introduce you, right? That's pretty awesome, because you've been up to a lot yourself, Amit, Mr. Humility. So thank you, everybody, and it's an honor to be here. I came from the West Coast yesterday, and I just noticed a little nasal, I don't know what, and so I am gonna stand over here and not direct myself at them or at you, in case I'm coming down with a cold or something, and thank you for wearing your mask as well. I do not think I'd be great as a speaker if I did that. Someone needs to just help me get my files. Do I just do my files and open?
Should have done that.
That's okay. That's all right. Thanks, Amit. Okay. So burnout, oh my goodness. It's like global overwhelm. I call it our global heart attack was the pandemic. And what I want to say here is 20 years ago, I walked into the hospital as a busy internist with 18 hospitalized patients. And I said, Nina, could you please get, it was 5 hours into my shift. I said, Nina, could you please get 40 IV milliequivalents of potassium for the gentleman in 636? And she took a look at me and she said, Dr. Sangwan, are you okay? I said, yeah. What are you talking about? I'm fine. She said, that's the fourth time in under 5 minutes you've asked me that same question, and I've answered you every time. My introduction to burnout was not through my education. Burnout was a badge of honor for me until I hit a brick wall. We not only need to understand what burnout is and simplify it, which we're going to do right now, we then need to be able to talk about it and take each other seriously long before I hit a brick wall like I did that day. I could have written the wrong prescription. I could have done so much more damage than I did than asking for the same experience, multiple times in under 5 minutes. So I've decided that, yes, I can work one-on-one with people with burnout. Yes, I can do it with executives. Yes. But in fact, I'm going to start doing it one company at a time, one community at a time, one country at a time. Because we don't have the time for me to sit there and do it one-on-one. I just don't think enough people understand burnout. And no matter how much I travel around the country, look at me. Like I'm telling you right now, I'm opening a burnout talk, telling you I'm feeling a little under the weather. Ding, 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 ding. Like, Neha, you got to slow down. So while I feel this sense of urgency, me burning out, speaking about burnout, would not be the greatest thing ever, right? But here's the thing. People say, oh, you must just be so refreshed. I've written a book on communication. So people say to me, your relationships must be amazing. You must never burn out. No, 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 no. I wrote those from a place of that being my nature, a conflict avoidant. Burnout, all or none. You tell me, you want me to jump? How high? I'll make it happen, right? All of you that are service providers and are in this, whether you're as a patient, wherever you are in this world, you've had to jump that high to get where you are. You've had to care that much. You've had to put your own needs in the background so you could serve. For all of us, right? If we don't take care of ourselves, I've canceled, just so you know, I've canceled the rest of the weekend. I'm supposed to be flying to DC tomorrow morning. I'm supposed to be speaking there. It's not happening. Why? Because I don't not burn out. It's just that I pick up the signals much earlier and I do something about it. The moment I start feeling congested, I'm like, my assistant, my boyfriend said, don't you think like you just flew, like you flew 6 hours. Like, don't you think you might just be congested? I said, no, I fly a lot and I don't end up congested. I better take this early signal and do something with it and give my body the rest that it needs so that I don't end up in the other places. I have to tell you, it takes me a lot to cancel something, a lot. And I'm sure for you too. So I want you today, this is what I'm gonna do. I have 45 minutes or 40 minutes now. I am going to do something where you guys get to get the overview. We're going to simplify, demystify this thing called burnout. We're going to personalize it to you, although you're just going to get a touch of that today. Then we're going to give you, I'll give you where you can get the practical tools to, solve it. And it's not just me. Yes, I write books. It's not just me. If it's trauma, I want you to know Gabor Mate. If it's whatever the questions are you're going to ask me at the end, okay? I'm going to try and guide you in that direction because what I believe is we're burning out because the external world, we've all co-created this. We've used our minds to speed up collectively the external world. We say things like faster is better, do more with less, profit over people. No one says that out loud, but that's what they mean, okay? So it is warm in here, right?
Yes.
Okay. This is happening, okay? Well, in the spirit of taking care of me, this is happening, never happened before on stage. Okay. When we agree in a social setting that is the truth, that do more with less, faster is better, all this stuff, at some point, generative AI comes along and we've exceeded our own biology, right? We're building things that are faster than we can even function. So if you're exhausted, let's take it. It's not your fault, number one. Number two is, let's talk a little bit about how we got here. Any complex problem I'm trying to solve, I solve on a me, we, world level. That's the engineer in me. I go to root cause problem solving. You're looking for a Band-Aid, you're looking for a quick fix, I'm not your woman, okay? I go to the root cause, and I try to solve it there. So for the last 20 years, when I burned out and that experience with the nurse happened, I went to a psychiatrist, my colleague. I called him up and after an hour in his office, he said to me, you need two things. You need a prescription for Prozac and you need a prescription for time off. And I was like, wait, but there's 16 more patients that I have to go see. I was just like doing a sideline to see what you thought, like a side consult. And he's like, Neha, he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, those 16 patients are going to be seen and it won't be by you. And I remember that moment going, oh, like, I think this is a little more serious than I thought. Next, I'm standing in line to the pharmacy, and I'm like, how did I go from running the hospital to standing in line to pick up my own prescription in less than an hour? Then I'm driving home, and I'm looking at the prescription that I just filled that's sitting on my seat, and I'm like, I don't know what this thing is that I'm going through, but it doesn't feel like a Prozac deficiency. Now, I have nothing against Prozac. I've prescribed it, okay? But here's what I believe about medications. You need the right med for the right ailment, for the right person, for the right length of time. This, you go on something and you're on it forever, unless you have a chronic illness, unless you have, I'm on thyroid, I'm on it every day, yes? So it's not that I'm against medications, it just didn't fit. Like, I was like, oh, I don't feel depressed. I hit a wall, I was going fine. So what you want to do is, in this experience, when I go through what we're going to go through right now, I want you to assess, does this feel like me? If it doesn't and someone else tells you you're burned out, you're not burned out, okay? It's you, N equals 1, that matters, okay? We spend our time saying N equals 10,000, all of these things. Yes, it does. Research studies are awesome. And I want to ask, where have we lost N equals 1? Pay attention to yourself as we go through this. Here we go. Next. So yes, me, we, world. If all these factors are happening, okay, there's a global world disruption that's going on, whether it's climate change, whether it's, pandemic, remnants, people haven't quite recovered, whether it's the, wars and terrorism. There's a lot of, this isn't working, but I'm just going to keep going. None of the words are showing up, but I'm just going to keep going. So this is hybrid work, and we're figuring out hybrid work. Maybe, you know what it was? I think I was clicking it too fast. I'm sorry, I blamed you and it wasn't you. Okay. And then along comes generative AI, right? Chat GPT. All right, none of the words are going to come up. That's fine. So what is it, right? I just want you to take a moment. You don't have to say anything to anyone. Maybe there's something on a world level that's happening for you that would be contributing to stress on a world level, right? I said me, we, world, okay? Oh, it's like a little, you got to give it a kick. I'm just warning everyone who comes after me. Okay. So in the me, we, world level, what is there on we going on? Anyone notice an election coming up anytime soon, right? The divide that occurs in our families, in our neighbors, in our communities that's been going on for a while now, yes? There's a we level of stress that layers on top of the world stress that you've been going through, okay? Here's what I believe. Our next job is to elevate our relationships by deepening our connections. So healing the divide is on our table, however long we put it in the future. At some point, we've got to do it, okay? Then let's move to you, the me. You're cruising down the highway, 70 miles an hour, and suddenly the check engine light comes on. Do you, A, pull over, pop the hood, and get to work? B, do you treat it like you treat the low fuel gauge? You've easily got another 40 miles. Or C, do you slap a piece of duct tape over that check engine light? Because we wouldn't want to interfere with your texting, now would we? One thing we know in whether it's a fancy piece of technology, whether it's a high performance vehicle, it relies on error messages to function. True? And if we're not listening to those error messages, we miss the early signals that tell us to slow down. Something's not working. Something's not going to be okay. Those danger signs. You're missing lots of signals before you run out of gas on the side of the road. True? Yeah. So we also have a check engine light. And this is what I would ask you. How does your body You guys, this is fascinating. Like, oh, I like it. All right, I'm gonna ask the team to do this all the time. So what is your check engine light? I'm gonna tell you mine. When I move out of my comfort zone, my physiology tighten, my throat constricts, globus hystericus, okay? And my stomach turns. That's my unique way that my body map signals to me. It's my check engine light, okay? What's yours? Because yours is gonna be very different than mine. Someone once said to me, oh, I know when I get out of my comfort zone, like I sweat on the back of my left arm. I'm like, what? Right? Another person who's of pale complexion says to me, oh, I'm Irish, I flush. That sucks because everybody else knows at the same time I do. So people who flush, right, they don't even get the lag time that the rest of us do when our heart starts racing, stomach starts turning, and nobody else knows, right? It's visible. You start twitching, you start turning red, everybody else knows. That's why children who have that happen get so self-conscious so early, okay? Be extra sensitive to them. All right, you guys, I'm serious. There's like a dance to this that works. Okay. How do I override that throat constriction and stomach turning when I was in the hospital? Oh, I had a time-tested equation, and it went just like this. 2 ice-cold 16-ounce Mountain Dews, plus a king-size Snickers bar, and you could get me to stay up taking care of patients for 36 hours. 36 hours straight. No one died on my watch. Each one of you knows what that is for you. You know when you're exhausted and you still have to do X, Y, and Z, when you got to get over the deadline because it has to happen. What's your time-tested equation that you use? Now, I'm going to give you some examples here. I call mine the sugar caffeine buzz strategy, okay? I used to be really upset about it because now I eat like whole foods, I'm gluten-free, dairy-free. I mean, you don't even want to know what I am, right? So many frees. But here's the thing. I thank that strategy. I'm not mad at that strategy. That strategy got me through some hard times. It saved many patients, I promise you. So I'm grateful for the strategy, but here's the kicker, and this is going to be the takeaway for the whole talk. I've outgrown that strategy. I crashed and burned on that strategy. That means I've outgrown the strategies I've been using, and it's time for an upgrade. Okay? I don't want anybody leaving this talk beating themselves up when you figure out your strategy for overriding the early signals. That's not what this talk is about. Nor is burnout your fault. You want to give yourself a gold star for working this hard. But you've been pushing through your body, not partnering with it. And that's supposed to change. Yeah, are we good? Other ideas. Coping strategies. There's the snooze it off strategy. What about the Netflix binge strategy? What about the work even harder strategy? What about the retail therapy strategy? What about the glass of wine after work strategy? Make it a 2, please, right? There's so many ways that we miss these strategies, but they're things we think are normal. So we don't pick up what we're experiencing. We don't have time to tune into our body. There's so much to do, okay? Here we go. All right, the triad of burnout. I'm going through this stuff real quick so I can take you through the bigger stuff. You look it up, they're going to say 3 things: exhaustion, cynicism, and ineffectiveness, okay? Now, what do I mean by that? I mean physical, mental, emotional exhaustion. That goes on for a while. And then this undercurrent comes in. It's kind of like when you're walking on the beach and suddenly you can feel something, but you didn't see it, okay? It's when your mind starts saying things like, doesn't matter how hard I work, it's not gonna make a difference anyway. And your own mind and thoughts start to undermine you, okay? When you're in that space, now cynicism starts coming in. You'll start, even if you're lonely, you'll start distancing yourself from others because you don't have the energy to interact. Not because you don't need to, not because you don't want to, not because you don't benefit from social interaction. You just don't have it in you. That's not your fault either. It's brilliant because what you're doing is conserving energy. okay? Except it's not gonna take you to a great place, okay? So exhaustion, cynicism, I've already given you me hitting a wall. You know what ineffectiveness looks like. All right, I'm gonna go through this next section fast because I wanna get to the tools of how I'm thinking through solving this. Now, what I'm gonna tell you is, even though I'm gonna go through this fast and you're gonna go, oh, I want a picture, I'll give you a link. You can go there and get it, okay? So I'm not gonna leave you hanging. All right, phases of burnout. The first one is the alarm phase. I told you, you're not fine Monday and then burned out on Friday. You are way too sophisticated. Mother Nature is way too sophisticated to ever let that happen. Phase one is the alarm phase, where you're jumping on a treadmill that feels like it's going too fast. Okay, that experience? Now, that's the alarm phase. When you've been on that phase for a long time, and instead of jumping off the treadmill going too fast, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna stay on this treadmill and keep going, okay? And it becomes your life. Now you move into the chronic adaptation phase. And you walk into your barista in the morning and you're like, yeah, can you make mine a double today, right? And you used to run 2 miles and it was fine, or walk. Now you're like, I think I need 3. So when you use more of anything to get the same level of stress relief, you're in chronic adaptation, okay? You're adapting to this thing that once was okay with less of a strategy. And then you hit the exhaustion. One more thing happens, and you hit the exhaustion phase, and you go down the slippery slope of burnout to ineffectiveness. This is when it looks like it happened all of a sudden. You're like, I was fine. No, you weren't fine. You were in chronic adaptation, and you were barely hanging on. Does this make sense? Okay. Now we're moving in. Now this is the part that you're gonna go, slow down, slow down. I'm not slowing down, okay? Physical symptoms will show up, but physical symptoms can be physical. You don't think of burnout the first time you get a physical symptom. You go to your provider and you find out if something serious medical is going on. If they say to you, you're fine, but you don't feel fine, but they cleared you physically, then you think about things like burnout. Does that make sense? Okay? So don't say the speaker on stage told me that the fatigue was burnout. I didn't. I said, go to your doctor, okay? And then we'll talk about it. This is how the alarm phase looks initially. You're missing deadlines, you're making mistakes, you're losing connections, you're coming in late, okay? When you have been doing that for a long time, all of a sudden you start procrastinating, calling in sick, social withdrawal, resentment, cynicism. And this is how I know that you're at the end of that chronic adaptation, heading right into the exhaustion phase, because you're apathetic. You're saying things like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Now, I just put a note here that substance abuse is just a coping mechanism overused. Think about this, and it's just like a side note. Every one of us has had trauma in some form or another. And if we don't heal it, okay, we all went through a global pandemic, that's enough, okay? If we don't heal that, but we start having a glass of wine or chocolate chip cookies or whatever it is, how many chocolate chip cookies are there to heal you from your global pandemic trauma in the world? How many do you need? It's endless because it's not on the level that it's happening. So this thing will need more and more and more and more of it, but your heart and isolation or whatever happened never gets healed, okay? So that's just like a side note. Exhaustion phase, that's when you're having difficulty. You go on vacation, a weekend is not enough to recover, a week is not enough to recover. You're feeling like this underlying heaviness that you can't get rid of, okay? Depression, just here's a note, depression and burnout, listen, there's an argument about it. I do not believe they're the same thing. Evidenced by me with my Prozac deficiency on the way home going, what? Let me finish that story. This is why you never let a doctor be your patient. I got home and I took that Prozac and I put it in the top drawer because what started flashing in front of me were all the side effects that were gonna happen with it and that I was gonna need to be weaned off of it. And I thought to myself, well, I'm gonna meet with him every week and now I'm not at work, so gosh, I mean, there's no stress, although it was much more stressful for me to be paid for time I was not working. That was its own stress. Mm-hmm. I'd much rather be doing because then I don't have to feel.
Yeah.
I had done that my whole life. I didn't even call that a strategy. The more I did, the less I ever had to feel. Notice if that's you. Okay, just take a check. Is your work your love? Because then you don't have to actually feel the way you feel in the quiet moments. Okay? So anyway, on my 5th session in to see my psychiatrist, I said, I was about to say I slept through the night and I don't have that throat constriction. It took me 5 weeks, okay? And he says to me, oh my God, you look great. That Prozac is kicking right in on time. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot to tell you that I put it in, oh my God. So I tell him, and he looks at me and he says, so I'm a psychiatrist, I can't bill unless you're on medications. Would you like to start taking the medication? Or would you like to see another provider? That was the day I swore to myself I would figure out what it was gonna take in this system to learn how to heal this, because we're in a broken system, you guys. When I'm getting better, the answer is not that I'm going on Prozac. That's not the answer. So I left this amazing man who taught me a lot, because the system we are in, remember me, we world? The system we are in sometimes doesn't allow us to get the help we need. Make sense?
Yes. Yes.
That is not you, okay? Next. If you want this, it's, you can get all those slides, the triad and the blah, 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 all the details, right? You want to download that, you can. Take a picture of it. I'm going to give you 2 seconds to do that. Yeah, are we good? Get it from a friend if you didn't get it, okay? All right. Typical burnout, here's the prescription you're gonna get. The way I was trained. I'll give you 10 days, a month off, whatever I think is the right context for what you're telling me. The next thing I can give you is some cocktail of an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or sleep medication, because I gotta stop your physiology. This locomotive is like going full steam ahead, straight to the brick wall. So I'm gonna try and help you feel better. This is useful, okay? If I'm really progressive as a provider, I'll tell you to do a stress management class, or I'll send you out in nature to do yoga or something, okay? Now, here's the problem. 10 days or a month later, I'm gonna send you back in the ring for round 2 without any idea how you got there or what to do differently, and we're all gonna be surprised that you didn't get better with all that time off. You didn't develop these patterns in 10 days. You're not gonna get out of them in 10 days. But here's the kicker. When you start doing the real healing, which comes next, what I want you to know is, people go, oh, Neha, you told us so much, where do we start? You start with whichever one of these items I'm talking about lights you up inside, says, I could do that, because they're all related. When you sleep better, also, when you go on a walk, you sleep better. When you eat something and do something nourishing for yourself, it helps you in the other arenas. You get more energy, you get more, right? You have sustained energy, you don't have the dips and the highs and lows. So don't ask me that question, okay, which is, where do I start? That's an N=1 question. Ask yourself, as you're going through this, what does my body map say? Oh, wow, I could do that, okay? So that's where we're headed. So you're gonna get this when you're done. I'm gonna give you a link at the end, okay? Nobody panic how fast I go through these. Not only am I gonna give you a link to get an interactive, digital, downloadable assessment for you to do on your own time, okay? No rush. You don't do a burnout assessment in a rush, okay? And the other thing is, I even made 6 videos of me walking you through the whole thing, okay? You're gonna have everything you need. It's coming at the end. Right now, what I need is your N=1 presence and double vision. You're paying attention to what's on the screen and what I'm saying, and you're paying attention to your body map. You remember that thing that tells you when you light up by something, when you go, oh, that's me, when you resonate? Tune into that. And here's my guess. If you've had cystic fibrosis or worked with people with cystic fibrosis, at least I'm gonna give you my experience. You guys are tuned in to people's early signs, right? Because you know that that's something important for you to pay attention to to take care of, right? So if I'm not speaking to you, what I want you to know is I want you to say, oh, me and my body map, we're totally connected, sometimes too connected, right? That's okay, and I acknowledge you. I'll tell you, 95% of the world, 98% of the world doesn't know what I'm talking about, okay? Because we're in a world that everything external is what you pay attention to, okay? Here we go. You remember this triple vision? We are now at me. Aren't you excited? It's time. Here we go. This is where we personalize it to you. Okay, that's the assessment you're gonna do. Right now I'm gonna tell you what's the overview, right, that I use to look at this. Where you are from burned out to fully charged can be determined by whether you have a net gain or a net drain of energy on a physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual level. So I want you to just take that in for a moment. Where you are from burned out to fully charged can be determined by whether you have a net gain or a net drain of energy on a physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual level. You might be thinking to yourself, how do I measure that? Here we go. Physical energy, I'm talking about how well do you nourish yourself with whole foods regularly throughout the day, right? I mean, for those of you intermittent fasting, no, not throughout the day. How well do you sleep? And what I mean by that is, do you ever notice that now we don't ask ourselves if we feel well rested? We look to see our readiness score. Like, am I ready for the day? But like, we're relying on technology to tell us whether we're tired. I love technology. It better not replace you. You better have an N=1 check-in and then do a guessing game. I'd give myself a 78. I wonder what it is, and then see what they say, okay? But don't give up you, okay, for technology. Ask yourself in the morning, when you've had 7 to 9 hours of quantity of sleep, now, do I feel well rested? Because that's the question you want to ask no matter how much sleep you've had. Do I have a joyful way to move in my body multiple times a day? Well, I had a beautiful dinner last night with one of the members here. Chris, are you here? Where are you? Chris? Oh my God, I just said Chris. It's not Chris. Oh my God, what just happened to me? Tell me, who did I have dinner with last night? Help me. Where are you?
Oh, she's right
You're
there.
masked. That's why I didn't see you. Why did I just call you Chris? It's short, though. It's short for your full name. I'm Sam. It's Sam. It's Sam. Okay. She wrote me before this convention and said, would you meet me? I've never met her. Would you meet me the night before? What I have to say is she read my book and noticed that I hate exercise. I've got sleep down, I've got food down, I've got energy down, moving in my body goes back to trauma from when I was 2. Moving in my body is hard for me. It brings up a lot. It's not fun. I can do it for a certain period of time, but not consistently. And so we hate exercise, is how she said, I knew you'd be one of my people. And I said, well, wow, I want to be known for a lot of things, but not we hate exercise, right? But it's true. People say, oh, you write these books, it must mean you've got it all together. No, I don't. I don't have it all together. I struggle just like everybody else struggles. And I'm somebody on my path who's just trying to share with you what I've learned so far. Okay? Oh my God, I just called Sam Chris. I definitely need to take the weekend off. All right, energy. And I spent like 2 hours at dinner with her. It's awesome, awesome. Energy, do you have an even level of energy? Or do you have the 3 o'clock energy dip, the post-lunch dip, and need to take a nap? Or do you have this even? So now, the way it works when you assess yourself is, on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your own self-satisfaction around your own food, sleep, movement, energy, okay? And then you go down and you do it. Give yourself a score, 1 low, 10, I'm totally satisfied. And anything you give yourself less than a 10 on, tell me what would make it a 10. Because you just scored it, right? Now, here's the trick that I really want you to get. This is not a head exercise alone. You're going to write things down and your body map is going to start going at the same time. okay? You have to have double vision while you fill this out. Because you know what your head will say? I'll sleep when I'm dead. But your body is going, I need sleep now. I need sleep now. And you're like, nope, head takes over, body gets a second seat. This survey that I'm going to show you the rest of right now, you need to be doing it with double vision, which is why I'm not having you do it right now, okay? I'm giving you the understanding so your head knows what's coming, but I need you, when you sit down to do this, do it with both your body and your head. Because at the end of answering all these questions in physical, do you know what the next question is? Overall, does physical give you a net gain or a net drain? And this is what people say to me. Oh, I mean, but some of them are net gain and some are, yep. So guess what? When you don't know up here, where do you go? Here. When your body is a net drain, this is what it does. Contracts, heaviness, tightness, tension. It's protecting you. When it's a net gain, light, open, energy flowing, right? You know what it is when you see the little one you love. Yes? What does that feel like when you see someone you love, or when you run into someone here that has been so helpful on your journey? That feeling is the net gain. The net drain feels the tight, constricted. So when you say things like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, no. That is here talking, and you're not fully embodied with what's happening, okay? So mental energy. Now I'm going to go a little quicker through these. There's thought patterns. Do you blame yourself when you make a mistake? Do you blame other people? Do you say it's administration, leadership, the government? What do you do? Where do you go in this experience of thought patterns? You could be losing a lot of mental energy. Judgment and comparisons. If you're busy judging yourself against your neighbors, your sister, whoever it is, net drain. Your work style. Are you somebody who's really regimented and likes to be a planner, but you're in a startup environment? Okay, like what work style are you, and how do you put yourself in places in the world where you're celebrated and valued? Next is your perspective. When you come across someone with a different opinion, do you hunker down, double down, and stick to yours, or do you get curious, not furious? Everything I'm doing today, I hope, expands your perspective. What are you going to find in this assessment? I'm going to have you write down your top 3 thoughts roaming in the back of your head. Like when you're in the shower, or you're driving down the street, or wake up in the middle of the night. And right next to them, when you write them down, pay attention to your body. Are they a plus, gain, or a drain? Because the background noise, you know you have 70,000 thoughts per day, and nearly 90 to 95% of them are the same as yesterday. If those are net drain, you're the one draining yourself, okay? We're going to talk about trust versus mistrust. What do you do when you think you made a mistake or failed? How do you perceive that? Excellence versus perfectionism. All of this is going to be detailed, okay? I'm going to explain all of it and all of that in the video, so you're good. Emotional energy. The way I think about it is, how comfortable are you with tears, anger, and anxiety in yourself and in the presence of others? What about trauma, grief, and loss? What about apology and forgiveness? What about joy and play? How much joy and play is there in your day? Are you just serious all the time, every day, right? You got to infuse the joy and play. Something really important that I want to bring in that I learned from Sam yesterday was really around, is it okay if I just share a little snippet? You have no idea what I'm going to share, but here we go. Is really this idea of there's always a runway till the end, so I don't have enough time. You know, that anxiety that a CF patient may have grown up with and felt. And suddenly, there's more time. There's enough time. Oh my God, there's all this time, but you might find yourself still on that treadmill of panic, of anxiety, not getting off the treadmill because it's how you trained yourself to live. That's one that I would say for providers of CF patients, pay attention here. The anxiety that might be running, it's like a duck, right, on the water, but like everything's like under here, it's like still running. Pay attention, because that might be where some of the drains are going on. I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to tell you you're a human skyscraper and you need all of these. Just don't worry about this. All right, how do you assess the emotional energy? This is how you do it, quickly. In what areas of your life are you avoiding conflict or difficult emotions? Boom, anyone can answer that one? Yeah, you know where you're avoiding it. Is it in your relationship? Is it finances? What is it? Is it that person at work? What is it? Your parent, your family? Who knows? My parents are getting older, and I have to tell you, it got done this week, but getting my parents to write a will and a trust has been a 20-year stress for me. I thought as a doctor, I could avoid my family ending up all the ways that I see so many other people end up. Yeah, wake up call. Your family is like the best, humility check. They're really amazing. What areas of these same areas in the emotional section? Which areas give you joy and peace, right? That's your pulse check. And I'm telling you again, don't just go here. You got to check in with your whole body as you're saying it, okay? And anytime your mind and your body don't agree, who wins?
The mind.
Your body. You know that book, the body keeps score, right? The body always wins. It knows. It doesn't have an agenda except to take care of you. Social energy, this one's amazing. This is about navigating power and hierarchy, whether it's in the boardroom, whether it's in the bedroom, whether it's at the dinner table. Listen, we're all navigating power and hierarchy here, okay? And as you do it, it takes a big toll on you. What about setting clear expectations, making clear agreements, drawing healthy boundaries? How good are you at that? That's your social energy. What about when someone does something that upsets you? Do you talk about them or do you talk to them? Okay. What about healthy conflict? When it's time for conflict, are you somebody that leans into healthy conflict? Now, this is a whole book, okay? I wrote an entire book on this. This is what that looks like, okay? Talk RX, it's a whole book. So if that's you on conflict avoidance, I wonder if I can skip ahead here. No, nice try. Okay, really? Okay, so what we're gonna do, guys? Oh my God, really? Okay. Oh, you guys, this is amazing. I think it's going to work. So now we're going to move into on social energy, the way that you figure it out. I want you to write down the top 5 people or groups of people you spend the most time with in person or online. As you're writing that down, you're going to figure out whether you have a plus or a minus next to each of those. And yes, I know, your kids, you love them, and they drain you. I know. So where are you going to ask? Who are you going to ask? Your body. Your body's going to tell you right now in their lives, is it a net gain or a net drain? Make sense? Okay. Oh, you guys. I kind of impressed myself here. All right. It happened. Let me give you the final piece, and I'll wrap it up where I promised you I'd give you stuff. That's the social, and then I'll show you the spiritual, and we'll wrap. Oops, social was this, okay? The top 5 people, remember that? Now, the last one is this, spiritual. Spiritual energy, what I mean by that is, what are your highest values? When you wake up every day, where do you spend your energy, your time, your effort? What matters most to you? Those are your highest values. Number 2, we're in a world moving faster and faster. You have to make more decisions in less time with less information than you've ever had to before. So I'm going to ask you things like, where do you take risks? Where don't you take risks? Where you take risks is where you trust yourself. Where you don't take risks is where you don't trust yourself. What about feeling valued and appreciated? That's about you being seen in the world. And have you reconnected to your true purpose in the world? And that will look like this, right? Some questions like this, okay? And what you're going to do at the end is just give yourself a new area of awareness. On what levels are you gaining energy or losing energy? This is how you get it. So this I want you to take a picture of. This is how you get your own thing, your own interactive thing and whatever you need for that. This is the prescription and the 6 videos that you are going to do your own prescription for, okay? You got it? Or you got it from someone else, okay? All right. And this, if you want it, you can have it. It's the body map chapter. If you don't know what I'm saying on body map and you're wondering what's going on, this is it. And then I just want to say thank you. And thank you for rolling with me. Thank you for letting the gaffes go. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for it all. You guys are amazing, and I hope that this was helpful. All right?
Thank you so much, Dr. Sangwan. In the interest of managing our time, we're going to hear from our remaining speakers and save questions until the end.
Great. Awesome. And if anybody wants any of these, you guys can pick them up.
Great.
There's 3 books, so if there's someone who's like really wants it, raise your hand. Just raise your hand, I'll give it to you.
So our next speaker is Dr. Quittner, a scientist from Joe DiMaggio's CF Center, speaking on professional quality of life and assessment of burnout, results from a national survey of healthcare providers from CF teams.
Oh, my goodness. I cannot tell you. This has been a long journey just to get to this moment. That would be a great story for someday. I just want to welcome you all again to this symposium on burnout, our own burnout, taking care of ourselves. I'm going to talk about a national survey that we conducted, and many of you participated in our survey on healthcare provider burnout. So this is the first time we've really had a survey to assess professional quality of life and burnout in healthcare providers in CF. Here are my disclosures. So this really harkens back to this wonderful plenary last year on mental health and Shayna's talk on care team well-being. So all of you really matter, and there were 3 talks, and Shayna gave a talk on taking care of yourself as a provider and burnout. So I just wanted to note all of our multidisciplinary team members there and how important it is. We work so hard every day to think about taking care of yourself. So burnout, I'm going to give a slightly different definition of burnout, a work-related syndrome characterized by emotional exhaustion, reduced personal accomplishment, and increased depersonalization. And that really means reduced empathy. And empathy is something that we all have and bring to our care of people with CF. So that idea that as we get burned out, our empathy is decreasing is really alarming. I also want to note personal accomplishment. Sometimes we don't focus on our own accomplishments. We're somehow modest or shy, or that's not allowed. Feeling accomplished is one of the real keys to solving burnout. So approximately 50% of physicians and allied health professionals, this is from data not in CF but out, in the world, are burned out. That's a very high rate. And 62% on average of nurses report significant burnout. I'm pointing out to you here, if you can see it, these slides are sort of blurry, but professional quality of life, which is sort of a unique factor that I'm going to bring to this talk, has a balancing between compassion satisfaction, which is on the positive side, and some of these burnout variables we've been talking about, like compassion fatigue, burnout, and secondary trauma. So secondary trauma is how we absorb some of the traumas of our patients, their pain, their disappointment, their crises, their decreases in health. Losing patients. I mean, most of us who've worked in CF a long time or even a short time have lost a number of people to CF. So I wanted to just show you this measure for a moment. Those of you who took the survey on burnout, which I think a lot of you did, filled out this measure of professional quality of life. And what I love about this is that it reflects some of the joy that Dr. Sangwan was just talking about in our work. So it's some of the positive things that we take away from working in this world of CF. Items like, I'm proud of what I can do to help. My work makes me feel satisfied. I get satisfaction from being able to help people. And so that is the balance for some of the burnout issues that we're discussing today. So the consequences of burnout are severe: higher rates of turnover, worse quality of care. You don't mean to, but you actually can deliver worse care. And I read Dr. Sangwan's book, and she was starting to see that her quality of care was not, asking the nurse the same thing over and over again. Increased depression among providers, and actually rates of depression among physicians, nurses, et cetera, are really quite high. Increased cost to the healthcare system. Physician burnout alone, turnover, costs $5 billion a year to the healthcare system. And I wanted to point out this survey that Kim Reno and her colleagues did last year in a recent national survey of social workers on CF teams. 53% of our social workers were either planning to leave their job or unsure that they wanted to stay. So that reflects really a problem we have in our field, in our CF community, that we really need to address. And I love the fact that Shana brought that to our attention last year in a session on mental health. It was about mental health of our people with CF, and then she ended with our own mental health. And I just think that is so appropriate. So the aims of this study were to assess healthcare providers' satisfaction with their professional quality of life, and I think it may serve to mediate the effects of burnout. And actually, when I am able to do the modeling with the data that I have, I'll be testing that. Assess perception of burnout among providers on CF teams. So a multidisciplinary survey went out to everybody. Assess relationships between professional quality of life and level of burnout, and identify predictors of burnout: age, gender, professional role, characteristics of your center. And I'll be able to present some of those results today. This was our method. So we developed this survey, and I'm so proud of the Mental Health Advisory Committee, my research group, who contributed mightily. You can see all of their names there on the bottom, worked on this survey and perfected it before it was sent out. It was exempted by the IRB, and it was launched in June of this past 2024, and it was closed on July 31st. We asked about your demographic information and the characteristics of the center where you work. You took the professional quality of life scale, and by the way, every single person on my CF team took this survey for me, which was really very, very nice and supportive of me, and the Maslow burnout inventory. And then we finally asked you to rank sources of burnout in your life, your professional life, as well as coping strategies. So that's the method. So here are some of the data. 645 respondents, largest study ever done in a caregiving group on burnout. It was completed over 8 weeks. And here's the race, ethnicity of the respondents. You can see we had a great distribution of age from 20 years of age past 61. And we had actually mostly women. I was disappointed with this, I have to say. I had wished that more men would complete the survey. So 81% of the respondents were women. So here are the professional roles of those who did respond, and I thought this was wonderful, great distribution. Physicians, advanced practice providers, including nurses, nurse practitioners, members of the CF team, mental health professionals, research coordinators, and non-technical assistants. Even secretaries filled this out. CF team characteristics, a pretty good distribution. Small centers, 119 small centers are represented, 247 medium, and 278 large centers. And look at length of time working, from 1 to 4 years all the way up to 15 or more years. I can tell you I'm in the 30+ year category of working in CF. So here are some of the data on professional quality of life. So I want you to look first at compassion satisfaction. Remember, that's that enjoyment of your job. We have no one in the low category, which is very positive. But we have a lot of people who say my compassion satisfaction is only moderate. And some people, it's very high. Burnout. We have 283 people reporting moderate burnout. And secondary traumatic stress, 216 reported moderate, and fortunately, most people were reporting low. What I've done underneath it is kind of give you some of the risk factors, and I'll mention them again. Those who are 61 or older had higher compassion satisfaction. Those who were ages 20 to 30 reported higher secondary traumatic stress than others. And that's something really interesting. Those are our young people entering the field, and we may not be giving them the resources and tools to support them as they kind of do this caregiving role and experience those secondary traumatic stressors. So some of the risk factors, again, providers 61 or older were having higher compassion satisfaction, and those working in the field 15 years or longer. Higher secondary traumatic stress for those 20 to 30. Higher secondary traumatic stress for women than for men. Higher secondary traumatic stress for white versus non-white providers. And burnout was highest for those working 10 to 14 years in CF. That sort of mid-career point where people may be saying, okay, I've had enough, I'm burned out, I haven't taken care of myself, nurtured myself, and I'm exhausted. Yeah, and I see a lot of people nodding. I absolutely know that feeling. So now this is the Maslow burnout inventory, and I'm going to walk you through this carefully. Occupational exhaustion, where you see red, that is danger zone. That is bad. So 27% of the respondents are in that occupational exhaustion burnout phase. 18% reported loss of empathy and depersonalization. And actually, when we looked at the data, 45% of the respondents were between the moderate to high depersonalization range. So that's also a red flag. And this also surprised me, personal accomplishment. In the red zone, not feeling that I'm accomplishing anything or I'm being seen or recognized. I was actually very shocked by this finding because I felt like we do a lot of things in CF to honor ourselves and our accomplishments, but somehow that's not happening maybe at the level of the center or the level of the hospital. So we're in the red zone in that sense of personal accomplishment. So the risk factors, higher personal accomplishment, again, old people like me, 61 years or older had higher scores than those working 10 to 14 years in CF. Higher scores of depersonalization for those ages 20 to 50. Burnout higher for those with 10 to 14 years working in CF. And interestingly, we're just beginning to crunch this data, but mental health clinicians, social workers, psychologists, and I have to admit, I put the psychiatrists in the mental health clinician category. I know they're physicians, but I put them over there in that category. We actually reported better scores on all three Maslow burnout inventory scales than any other professional. It's really interesting, given Kim Reno's data too about social workers. A little contradictory, but interesting. I wanted to also show you the correlations. How do these two measures go together? So on the left side, you see the Maslow burnout inventory, occupational exhaustion. And just as you might think, it's negatively correlated with the professional quality of life satisfaction, and it's positively correlated with ProQL burnout and with secondary traumatic stress. The MBI scale on loss of empathy is negatively correlated, again, compassion, satisfaction, positively with burnout and secondary traumatic stress. And I thought this was really interesting. The correlation between personal accomplishment on the MBI and the ProQL is 0.67, which tells me they're measuring slightly different things. If the correlation was like 0.8, 0.9, I'd say, they're redundant. Are actually picking up on some slightly different things. But this shows us that these tools are actually really robust and measuring constructs of interest. So now, here's how you ranked the contributors to burnout. Excessive and cumbersome documentation, 219 people said that's top. This is by frequency of endorsement. Insufficient compensation. Too many administrative tasks. Lack of respect from administration. And Dr. Sangwan had offered to me when I talked to her about coming here to give this talk, she talked to me about gifting us a webinar that actually talks about the administrative burnout problem of dealing with complex healthcare systems. So I'm probably going to take her up on that. I think that's really important. We see here that those administrative issues are driving burnout. Insufficient staffing, excessive responsibilities. This one's important, not having enough time with patients. We feel like that in our clinic. We're running from one room to the next room, and we might want to spend a little more time with one family that's struggling, but we've got so many patients to see. Difficulty managing electronic medical records, government or institutional regulations, and working outside business hours. I can say that's one of my problems, working too much outside of my business hours, whatever those are supposed to be. Coping with burnout. Here are the top-ranked best strategies from your perspective. Talking with family or friends, exercise. I highly recommend exercise. I find that that's been super helpful for me. Spending time alone. You just may feel like you're flooded and overwhelmed with interactions with people constantly, and you just need some downtime. Sleep. I can really relate to this one. I don't get that much good quality sleep. I bought a new mattress. It's actually tracking my sleep. It's taught me a lot about the nights where I actually wake up feeling rested and energetic. I look at that sleep tracker. I got more than 7 hours, whereas other nights I've gotten like 5.5. It really makes a difference for me. Reading, spending time in nature, that's one I do a lot. Listening to music. Spending time playing with pets is one of my favorites. Watching movies, and I have to say I'm guilty of internet shopping. I realize, man, Amazon. I have just about purchased too much on Amazon. So, how do we fix this problem? What kinds of solutions? Dr. Sangwan has given us some ideas about how to work on ourselves, listen to our bodies. But it's really enhancing resilience and longevity, this PERMA model. So I wanted to sort of talk to you about that positive emotion and gratitude practice. There's this great app that's free, 3 Good Things. I have it on my phone. I try to every day think of 3 good things that happened to me today. And you know what? That just helps me focus on some positive stuff. You can also use moments of joy. That's something in CFCBT. Noticing those moments of joy that happen to you, that you may just be so busy you didn't pay attention to them, but they're wonderful and they give you that sense of happiness and joy. Mindfulness. Someone's going to talk about interventions on their CF team, and this is a great one. Relationships. Here I want to call out the mental health peer consultation group. People in that group have found it so supportive. Social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists who've joined this group. This is one of those very important supportive relationships that we've been trying to build in the CF community. And there are several listed here. Another one, meaning. The mentorship program, which Emily Muther is working on, mentoring our younger colleagues, helping introduce them to the role, all of these ways of enhancing resilience and longevity. And finally, accomplishments. We are low on feeling personal accomplishments. And so where do we get those? Maybe our workplace is not really recognizing our hard work, our efforts, our gifts. And NACFC is one place where perhaps we can get some of that recognition. So I want to end with this picture. This is my CF team at Joe DiMaggio, and some of them are here today. I have to tell you, they are mitigating my sense of burnout. They are so supportive. They are so kind to me. They knew all of my freak out about my data was late and everything, and they were there to support me. So I have a wonderful supportive team, and I want to call them out here today. So, acknowledgements. Here's our research team. Many people worked on this project. I would like to thank everyone who has responded to the survey. 645 people responded, which is amazing. And our other team members, Dr. Singh will be doing the statistical analyses, Dr. Anna Georgiopoulos helping us write this all up, Nivi Chowdhury, who has just delivered twins, and Robin Way. So with that, I say thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Quittner. Our next speaker is Katie Posch, Senior Laboratory Researcher and Research Coordinator from National Jewish Health, speaking on health of the healthcare team.
Great. Hello, everyone. I am Katie Posch, and our QI project was focused on health of the healthcare team, examining our own physical, mental, and social well-being. I have got nothing. Throughout the course of our careers, we've all likely experienced some of the signs and symptoms that we've been talking about already today of burnout. Anger, helplessness, overthinking, those physical aches and pains, and taking frustrations out on our coworkers. But by building resilience, we can find ways to persevere. Without really knowing it, our team has been working on preventing burnout and building resilience for several years. So we've previously presented on our QI work about finding joy in the workplace and the social and emotional benefits of having a cohesive and supportive team. We nicknamed our work the Sunshine Adventure Club, and our CF director, Dr. Nick, became our logo. That work was in response to all the heightened stress and isolation we were feeling during and after COVID. And those projects weren't necessarily focused on burnout, which we were all feeling even if we didn't put that name to it, but on finding joy and happiness, which we now recognize as a way to combat burnout. Everyone on the CF team, from the clinical care team to the research scientists, are included and encouraged to participate. And by including everyone in our activities, there's going to be more likely a sense of team and a better understanding and appreciation for those who are around us every day. And after the first year of our Sunshine Adventure Club activities, the QI team surveyed the CF team members and asked if they had participated in any team activity, and the majority had participated in at least one. And we've continued these activities and feel like our social well-being is really still being well supported. So what have we done? Since 2021, we've had activities every month or so that take place outside of the workplace. The activities are usually free or have a minimal cost, and they are always optional. We've had Christmas in July potlucks and attended our local CF chapter events together. Many of the activities we host are outdoors and involve some kind of physical activity like running, hiking, or yoga. Why exercise, and why is it so important to our team? Well, not to brag, but Colorado is often ranked as one of the healthiest and most active states in the US. We have over 300 days of sunshine and plenty of open space that gives us easy access to hiking, biking, skiing, so we really don't have an excuse. And exercise often lends itself to group activities. We're a big team, so by default, many people are doing similar activities. We've run as a marathon relay team together for over 10 years, and other team members routinely attend spin classes. And there's science to the benefits of exercise, too. Exercise has been associated with improving sleep, quality of life, resiliency, and it may also lower stress and depressive symptoms. If you're living and exercising in or around open green space, that may lower your risk of depression. However, the opposite could occur and diminish any of those positive effects if there's noise pollution or neighborhood deprivation. So more than where our team lives and who we work with, exercise also has an effect on several characteristics of burnout. And you may not need a lot of exercise. This figure shows the association between physical activity and the incidence of depression. And so with a lot of statistical analysis, the authors were able to show that relative to adults not reporting any physical activity, which is that red line, those accumulating half the recommended amount of physical activity, which is the orangey yellow line, had an 18% lower risk of depression, and those at the recommended level, or the green line, had a 25% lower risk. So beyond that level, there are diminishing potential benefits and a higher rate of uncertainty. So some is better than none, and too much might not be the best. When we began a QI project in 2023 on exercise in a post-ETI adult CF population, we decided to also examine our own regimens and attitudes on physical activity. We surveyed our team with an anonymous questionnaire asking questions about motivators, barriers, and the importance of exercise. And while the results weren't necessarily surprising, it did show us that we had work to do and areas in which we could definitely improve. As expected, there was a wide variety of exercise reported. Group classes, walking, running, yoga, cycling, weightlifting, really you name it, and someone on our team was doing it. The majority of respondents view exercise as extremely important, and just over half exercise at a self-reported moderate intensity. Also, not really surprising, though not necessarily good either, were the motivators and barriers to exercise that our team reported. Improved overall health was the top motivator to exercise, followed by maintaining a healthy weight and it being enjoyable. And then the top 3 barriers to exercise are motivation, energy, and time. In fact, more than 2/3 of our care team report that they find exercise enjoyable, but at the same time, they lack the motivation and energy to execute. Mental health was seen as both a barrier and a motivator to exercise, though pretty low on both sides. And then, as luck would have it, at the same time we were thinking of interventions that the QI could implement from this data, we were contacted by Dr. Samantha Monson in a program that she was developing. And instead of me telling you about it, I thought Sam should. So, with our technical difficulties, let's hope this works.
This is who I went to dinner with.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Sam, not Chris.
Full circle.
I'm Sam Monson, 43-year-old CF patient and clinical health psychologist. That jog that I just finished represents the complicated love-hate relationship I have with exercise. I love what it does for my health and that it served as my airway clearance this morning. And I absolutely hated the slog of doing it. In my 15 years experience working with patients on their mental health, I have come to hear countless stories of people's own love-hate relationship with exercise. And so I curated the best scientific evidence and built We Hate Exercise, a 12-week program designed to leverage top behavior change motivators to get people moving. A balance of social support and pressure, smart goal setting with an exercise coach, financial incentives, and more. In piloting the program, we found that people are finally meeting their physical activity goals. And bonus, experiencing the power of connectedness with others in the program, be that healthcare teams or patients, with CF or not. We hate exercise, but together we can do it anyway.
So Sam agreed to share some of her data with us for this presentation, knowing that We Hate Exercise is still under development and continues to evolve and change based on the data that she's gathering from her participants. Before the programming began, she surveyed us to gather some baseline data on meeting American Heart Association activity recommendations, on our level of burnout, and what we thought about our team cohesion. And just to highlight a couple of the questions, on a scale of I know I should be getting a lot more physical activity to I get plenty of physical activity, how do you feel about the amount of physical activity you got over the last month? Nearly 30% of us admitted that we know we should be getting a lot more, almost double any other answer. And in those responses to I feel burnt out from my work, 80% of us feel burnt out at least once a month, with a couple of us feeling it every single day. So this programming could not have come at a better time. To start, each of the 33 participants were randomly placed on one of 2 teams, either straight out of breath or 50 Shades of Awesome, and we were asked to set exercise goals. And what were the goals that the participants set? Well, they needed to be SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Everyone was starting at a different baseline, so there was a lot of variation in the goals. Some were based on time, some on an amount, or some on a distance. For example, the goals ranged from moving my body for 45 minutes, 6 days a week, to lifting weights 3 times a week, to getting 10,000 steps every day. The goals were able to be changed after each 4-week period of the programming if the participant wanted. And then throughout each week of the 12 weeks of programming, there were planned interventions. Mondays, it was exercise in disguise, offering a new or unique way to get us moving. We Hate Exercise would share a link and often a discount code to participate in one of these new activities. One example was aerial yoga at a studio called Air, which just seemed super appropriate for a CF care team. The other examples, we did some stand-up paddleboarding or had discounts to a dance class. Wednesdays were group chat prompt days, and during this, We Hate Exercise would give us a conversation starter to engage with our team. Among the prompts was, what is your favorite song to listen to while exercising? And this gave us the pieces to put together the ultimate exercise playlist. Another one was, who keeps you company while you exercise? And the group responded with several photos of children, partners, and pets. Fridays, as a research coordinator, was my favorite because it was science something. And these random exercise-related facts highlighted the many benefits of exercise from a scientific point of view. One tidbit focused on the effects of listening to music while you are exercising, showing that it enhances performance and reduces perceived exertion. Another explained temptation bundling, where you pair a pleasurable indulgence with a behavior you would like to increase. So, for example, binging your favorite TV show while you're running on a treadmill, or going for a really long bike ride to your favorite coffee shop. At the end of the week, we individually reported on our goals. A survey was sent out, and it simply reminded you of the goal that you set and asked if you met it for the week. It was an honor-based system because in reality, if you lie, you're only cheating yourself. However, if you were successful, you were entered into a drawing for a small prize, which was like a gift card to a bookstore, a bike shop, or a small gift like a plant or a homemade soap. How well did we do with We Hate Exercise? On average, 80% of participants met their goal each week. That large dip that you see in week 5, my numbers got a little shifted there, coincided with a snowstorm, a 50th birthday vacation, and the first reset of goals. But both teams were able to rebound the following week. And the programming went on for 12 weeks. At the end, there were team awards. And the most impressive were the folks that had the most successful weeks and that they met their individual exercise goal, whatever it was, for all 12 weeks. And then 5 people from each team met that goal each week. How did our intensity and views of exercise change during We Hate Exercise? There wasn't a lot of change with some of the data. With our sample size of 15 QI survey respondents, which is about half of the We Hate Exercise participants, 1 or 2 people feeling differently, trying something new, changing their intensity, or valuing the importance of exercise slightly more shifted the numbers. However, we did see more changes in both the motivators and barriers to exercise when we resurveyed the team. So as you can see in the dotted columns, which are the ones on the right-hand side, most barriers to exercise went down. We probably had a harder time coming up with excuses to not be exercising after the interventions over the last 12 weeks. As a barrier, motivation decreased by 50% after We Hate Exercise. Perhaps we found a new reason to motivate ourselves. And there was also a 30% decrease in lack of energy being a barrier to exercise. Were we more fit and therefore had more energy after exercising consistently for 12 weeks? However, time was the exception. Time as a barrier increased by 40% when the programming was over. We think maybe we were dedicating that time to exercise, and with the team competition that was involved to meet our goals, not having that time anymore could explain that increase. The motivations to exercise changed slightly also. Again, with our small sample size, it could be one or two people viewing exercise differently, shifting their goals, or participating in different exercises than they had at the beginning. Unfortunately, our enjoyment dropped, which could be from the pressure of having to exercise and setting goals instead of doing it just for fun. However, the biggest change was in perceived mental health benefits, and this was huge. It was a 267% increase. And there were several interventions during We Hate Exercise that highlighted the relationship between mental health and exercise that could explain this increase. And then finally, to go back to the questions that We Hate Exercise asked at the beginning of the programming, on a scale of I know I should be getting a lot more physical activity to I get plenty of physical activity, after 12 weeks, there was a significant drop in those acknowledging needing to get more physical activity and an increase to over 20% for those getting either plenty or nearly plenty enough physical activity. And then there was a slight decrease in feeling burnt out from our work, with a drop from 80% to 70% feeling burnt out at least once a month. So what can we take away from our We Hate Exercise experience, and how did our experiences impact our mental and physical health? Apart from the numbers, Sam conducted a qualitative analysis on the impact of We Hate Exercise through focus group interviews and came away with 5 main themes that support what we also saw in our QI surveys. We Hate Exercise creates connectedness. In addition to our continued Sunshine Adventure Club activities, 78% of participants in We Hate Exercise felt that the programming had a positive or very positive impact on team cohesion. We Hate Exercise also fosters self-care. It shifts the mindset about exercise, and it also motivates an increase in physical activity. As shown in our data, 44% of survey respondents feel like they're getting enough or close to enough exercise after participating in We Hate Exercise. And We Hate Exercise also touches on mental well-being. And this is highlighted in some of the quotes from the focus group. And you can read some of those here, but I'm going to expand on the one in the middle. I think We Hate Exercise changed the organizational culture of the team. Maybe before, if someone wasn't sitting at their desk and if they were going on a walk, you might be thinking, are they checking out or are they being lazy? But now, since this was something that the whole team was doing, that thinking changed to, they're just doing some self-care real quick in between patients, going to be 5 or 10 minutes, they're on it. This is probably going to make them more pleasant to work with. It sort of shifted the way we look at exercise. It's not even exercise. It's more like you need to do this for you, to create some space for yourself. And then with that, I'd like to thank everyone pictured here, almost all of whom participated in We Hate Exercise and our QI surveys, from the clinical, research, and science sides of the team, and then especially to Sarah, my co-QI lead, and Dr. Sam Monson. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Katie. Our final speaker is Dr. Prier, psychologist and professor at UNC Medical Center, speaking on learning how to ride the rapids of burnout together, a pediatric CF team's approach.
Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to talk to you all about this. This title came from a quote that many of you may have heard before, this idea of you can't stop the waves from coming, but sometimes you can learn how to surf them. So our team thought about how might we surf them? Are we drowning? And how might we support each other through this? So here are my disclosures. These are the objectives First is to talk to you about stress first aid, which was a model developed many years ago actually for the military. And so I'm going to take you a little bit through that. It's a peer support program. Then talk to you a little bit about what we did at UNC. And then you heard about the PERMA model already. I might just highlight a little bit more. But first, I thought I would ask you, this picture I used, so it's for stress first aid. I trained at UNC during the pandemic. The medical school called up Department of Psychiatry and said, please help take care of all of the healthcare providers at UNC. And then somehow my chair said, Mary Beth, you do that. And I said, I'm sorry, what? But I happened to be trained in stress first aid. And so we did sessions with over 1,000 healthcare providers at UNC. And we used this was some artwork done by a artist during the pandemic. And I sometimes start conversations by asking people, who are you in this picture? Where do you feel like you are? Are you holding up the umbrella? Sometimes when I give the talk, people feel very sorry for the umbrella person. Some people feeling like I'm actually on the other side of the wave. It's already taken me over. But just thinking about this as healthcare providers, right? And how sometimes you are putting yourself at the front of the wave and while taking care of the people in the bed. So this is also very relevant. I have a few memes in here because this is how I communicate, how I cope. And also, Helene is now involved and is tropical, or is category 2, 3, I don't know. Is she? Oh my goodness. Okay, she's getting worse every day. But in North Carolina, sometimes our schools shut down when it rains. But it also, on the left, so that's literally was on the news, right? In terms of, hey, this is your wind expectancy for today. Is your lid can on your trash can going to be open, or you can't find the trash can? This matches very well with the meme on the right. What is your mental health status today? Is your lid flipped open, or have you lost your trash can? Okay, so our team actually, I think this is posted in the workroom, just so you know that this is how our team also gets along. Okay. So we did a quick survey. We did not use any official validated tools, but just asked people some of these questions. There were 12 of us on this multidisciplinary team. And I just asked, how many of you feel burnout? And 70% said, I somewhat or strongly agree. And 75% said, I feel stressed. The biggest stressors are not going to be surprising. You've heard about them already. Time, workload, multiple patient needs. My chart, people can contact me anytime, any day. That's great and also not great. I asked generally these 3 components that you've heard about. Good news is that there was less depersonalization and that 92% of people felt competent and successful. Calm at work, this is hilarious. 25% of us feel that way ever at work. So, and 50% of us felt cynical. Now, I think we talked about this as a team, and some of us said, well, sometimes that cynicism could be sarcasm, right? And sometimes does that help us? So just note that there was discussion over that. Other great numbers are that 83% of us felt connected with colleagues and 100% felt connected with patients. And then 100% of people felt meaning and purpose in their work. 75% said, it's not my fault that I feel burned out. When we talked about it as a group, some people did say, I feel like it's my fault when I don't say no. I think we are often told, say yes, take chances, do more. And so those people felt we understood there are things in administration, hospital, et cetera, that are contributing to this, but sometimes I feel like maybe I should say no. So we were shoulding ourselves, for those of you who know CBT. And there were future ideas for ways to connect, and some of these things we are working on as well. So an intervention, we had a center director switch, and he decided to have a 1-day CF team retreat. I said I would not come unless there was food, and there was. There were good cookies. So we just had general peer support. We talked about each discipline, talked about what they're doing, what they're proud of, what they're hoping for. We talked about what we want to do together. And then I did a quick presentation on stress first aid. And we talked about that. And then going forward, every Monday we have QI team meeting. And we talk about patients for the week. We talk about our QI projects. And so each week I chose one C from the stress first aid, which I'll show you in a minute. We talked about it for about 10 10 minutes, introduced it, so it was kind of on your mind for the week. Okay, now I also started each week with a meme. So I don't know which one you like the best. A lot of people really liked Barbie, saying 1 meltdown is allowed. Please take pictures of this, if anything. Hopefully your work doesn't tell you to stop crying before going back. And I would love to know how to spiral into control. Okay, sorry. Anyways. All right, let me tell you about stress first aid. So it was developed with the National Center for PTSD. During the pandemic, I worked with Patricia Watson there, and we thought about how are we going to adapt this for hospital systems. So it was started for the military, and specifically Marines and Navy, which will then help you understand, why there are 7 C's, 7 C's, Navy, okay, to stress first aid. Some of these manuals are free and online, and so know that you can access them yourself. I love this slide. I think it's so important. I've presented on this many times, and I love always going back to this slide. I think it aligns a lot with some of the interventions we do, like ACT and DBT, because you see down the middle are these guiding ideals or values, which are so important in our life. And so you see how there's their double-edged sword of these values and ideals, which you've heard about in some of these talks. So why they might set you up to be a strength, and then also vulnerability. So you saw in that first picture this idea of selflessness, right? I'm holding up this umbrella, knowing that I'm gonna get, washed away, trying to protect someone in the bed. I've asked people before, so how many of you are physicians in the room? I won't ask you now. And how many of you recommend, annual appointments? And how many of you have seen your physician in the last 10 years, right? Or that may be too much. But anyways, it's this idea sometimes it feels easier to take care of other people, or we feel a calling to do so. And that's great. That's wonderful that you are all care providers, and it can set you up to then put yourself in second place. A few other I will just point out, Stoicism. It's interesting, when I did a lot of presentations, some people were very proud of Stoicism. And I think it can be helpful sometimes. Sometimes you almost feel like you do need to detach. I also work in pediatric palliative care, and it's hard for me to take on, the trauma, the grief every day that I see. And so sometimes you are learning to endure. I will often say it doesn't get easier though. The words may come easier to me, but I have to think about body map, right? Think about where am I feeling it? How am I trying to be stoic, but it not really helping? Moral code is another really important one, because I've heard people, and I'd be curious to hear more, talk about, are we really burnt out, or are we just experiencing really high rates of moral distress? And that's in multiple ways. Moral distress of, now healthcare is a business, right? For example. So moral code is this idea of you feeling there's right or wrong, and what it feels like when you yourself are watching others act in, what's the right word? Against your moral code, or you are forced to do so. And then excellence. So I usually say to people, you're here, you're excellent, okay? I will rat out my mom now, and she will know that I do this, because I'll tell her later. When I was growing up, an A-, why didn't you get an A? I was like, come on, right? But there was definitely this sense of excellence, of being our best. And sometimes that is great. That leads you to be, in your job, to do well, to get awards, rewards. But sometimes then there's a lot of shame and guilt and exhaustion that comes with that excellence. This is also part of the stress first aid model. These are called the 4 causes of stress injury. The first one, life threat, you'll know about, is often related to PTSD when we're witnessing or part of exposure to horrific experiences. Loss or grief loss is not just death of someone, but also loss of other things, like loss of sense of self, loss of the ability to do things you enjoy, having time to exercise, for example. Inner conflict is, again, going back to this moral distress. And then wear and tear. I think this is what I have recognized in myself a lot recently, is this accumulation of stress, right? That we feel like there's this new baseline of I'm stressed all the time, I'm running really, really fast on the treadmill. And look at the end of the definition, without any time to rest and recover. So think about, for you, how do you even define that? What does rest mean? Does that mean I get 6 hours of sleep? And what does recovery look like? When's the last time I actually felt recovered? Right? We talked about, is 10 days off work enough time, or how do I get to that place? This then is what is used by the military, again, in some ways to destigmatize talking about how you are doing, because mental health saying, how many of you are going to respond if I ask, how are you today? Fine, thanks, how are you? Right? Or living the dream, maybe. I'll show you a meme later that is opposite of that. But this is how they talk about these stress continuums. So it goes from green zone to red zone. You'll see some military language in there. So we may not like the idea that red zone is called ill. But you see in green zone, you're kind of your optimal functioning, which does exist, I guess, right? Red or yellow is reacting to any stressor. It's different from all of us. Injured is when you're now reacting to these kind of 4 causes of stress injury. And red is when mental health providers might be diagnosing something like depression, anxiety, and you're noticing it in more than one area. So at work, outside of work, for example. During the pandemic, this was posted in the bathrooms at our hospital. This was when people's, a great place to post things, right? We also, some teams, so our MICU would start the day with the physician who was running the unit saying, hey, everybody, I'm in the orange zone today. Where are you? Right? How are we going to get through this together? And it was a way of normalizing, talking about this, and then thinking about as a team how we support each other. So again, Stress First Aid is very much a peer support network. It was also used a lot, I should have said after 9/11, when a lot of the firefighters and everybody were in constant ongoing trauma, and they didn't want to debrief every trauma that was happening, but they wanted a way to support each other, to check in with each other. And then also to recognize, okay, if I'm saying every day I'm in the orange or red zone, maybe there are things I want to do or my team might suggest, help me, encourage me to get back to the green zone. All right, so here are your 7 C's, the Atlantic, the Pacific, and I can't name them all, so I'm gonna stop. These first 2 are, so checking in on yourself, your body map, kind of observing, listening, yourself and others. The second one is coordinating, that's getting resources. And then 3 through 7 are considered the 5 essential human needs for people who are in ongoing or experiencing trauma, stress. And there's not a perfect recipe for how much you need in each category. It's back to the N=1 idea of it's up to you and what is most helpful. That can change with time, what is most helpful for you. Covers, so during the pandemic, going back then, safety was a big concern for a lot of people. And so where we focused a lot of conversations, calm as mental health providers or otherwise, how many of you feel calm when someone tells you to take a deep breath? Okay. So I do not. That is one way to get calm, though, but there are other different ways of for example, distracting yourself or doing exercise. So that's another big discussion is calm. I'm going to focus on connect and competence just to tell you a little bit about them because I think there are some great points within there. And then the last one is confidence. So I'm going to take you and connect. This is how we presented it. And it covers 3 types of social support. And I joke with people, so what is your love language of social support? It also talks about coping isn't a competition, right? Although sometimes, and a lot of times people feel it's a badge of honor. Yeah, I think, sometimes I've definitely heard people say, well, I used to have to work 300-hour weeks, or, but now you all have it easy. You only have to work 100, right? So it can feel like that, but coping's not a competition. But so there are 3 types of support. One is instrumental. This may be surprising, but in the military, this is most often preferred and most easily received. And this is an idea of what tasks can I do for you? But think about for you, if I said to you, hey, I'm going to Starbucks, can I get you something? You might quickly say, no, it's okay. It's all right. Or if I said, hey, can I help you with seeing these patients in clinics? It's okay, I can do it, right? I need to be able to do it. I should be able to do it. So instead, we talked about how might you, first of all, receive support, or how might you say to somebody, I'm going to Starbucks, I'm gonna get you a drink. Or you have patients, why don't you go home, I'm doing this. So again, how do we offer that? How do we receive that? Informational support. So I don't know how many of you all want more information now on Helene, right? And where she's going and if that's going to make you feel more nervous or not, how that helps you with connection. Some of us are cognitive processors and want more information that helps us. And then the last part, emotional support, is what you often think of when you think of connectedness or social support. But I like the questions. So do you feel community at work and at home? How are you staying connected? And who supports you? And who are able to vent to or share memes with? I think I should also add. Then competence. So this, people who are new to the job, we say that there's lots of turnover. When you're new, you can often feel less competent in what you are doing. What I think is really important that I appreciate and have paid more attention to personally myself over the past year is the different roles and areas where you may feel competent or less competent. So for example, if I'm going back to my grading system, I may say, hey, you're getting an A at work, but I feel like I'm getting a C- in parenting. And I don't like that. And so actually, maybe I'm going to change this. Maybe I want to figure out, how do I get an A in parenting? And I'll talk with residents sometimes about, hey, you can write, we'll say, I want to do A, patient care, and C notes. Kind of, as you're prioritizing different things you have at work, but also in your different domains of your life. The other thing in here, we talked about accomplishments and pride in what you do. So a lot of us might be like, someone says, good job. You're like, oh, thanks. Yeah, right. We may not receive it. But also what is important if we think about parenting is we want labeled and specific praise. So if your boss says to you, good job, that may feel good. But if somebody says specifically, I really loved how you did X, Y, and Z, it made me feel you're so important. So thinking about how we provide that to each other and to yourself. So these were just some other examples. So this was feedback from the team. I love that the memes saved someone. Also, people thinking it was really helpful to talk together as a team. Again, ways we integrated it is the trash cans. I think, Tanya, is the trash can in the workroom? Okay, all right. Where your trash can is. Okay, thank you. Yes. Encouraging others, providing more praise, and then figuring out from each other, so what is your love language? Hey, should I bring you cookies? Should I do your work? So again, this peer support model, and then also figuring out more for yourself. I want you to know about some mental health resources. So this we have, the MHAC created. This is Stress First Aid in visual format. And this is for team facing, and we have one for patients and families so that you could talk them through Stress First Aid very briefly. We also have this coping handout for teams. I have copies of both of these up here. They're also in the CF resource library if you'd like them. But this kind of walks you through the PERMA model. And so talks about all of those different components, which are here. And I'm going to grab my phone because I forget this sometimes. But when you think about 3 good things, good is an emotion, but there are a lot more emotions that are good. And I think I like to remind myself of this. And when I do it with patients, think about all of these types of positive emotions: peace, freedom, joy, accomplished, energetic, grateful, productive, restorative, awesome, pleasure, thankful, hopeful, excited, wonder, inspired, comforted. So really helpful to, again, remember all these different emotions we may experience. All right, so want to make sure you know about MHAC. In yellow are those ones I mentioned. Also, there are peer consultation groups. Please join. We have over 100 mental health providers who are in them, and an amazing mental health advisory committee. And here are your memes. To end the session, please don't cry on business hours. And we can all say together, the horrors persist, but so do we. Okay, so thank you for putting up with my memes.
Thank you so much, Mary Beth. For the remaining few minutes, we'll take questions for our panel and invite you to come up to the microphone or to submit questions through the app.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hey. Thanks for the very excellent memes, data, and strategies. It's the trifecta of information that we all need. My name's Adrienne. I'm a psychologist. I absolutely love and support the idea of individual and team interventions to address burnout, and wanted to ask a question about some of the contributors to burnout, like excessive and cumbersome documentation, inadequate staffing, insufficient compensation. Those are pretty big. When they all converge, how much coping can we really do? And in addition to individual and team interventions, are there also advocacy efforts to address some of these contributors to burnout?
Oh, that's a huge.
Great question. And that's why it's not your fault, right? Because
It's not our fault, but we have to deal with it.
Exactly.
And no one else wants to change things.
Yes.
Administrative.
All right, tell me your name again.
Hi, I'm Adrienne.
Adrienne, stay there for a second because I'm gonna try to talk out what you really want to hear.
Absolutely.
So tell me again. So what are the issues that you were facing that are the ones that feel most challenging?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's just me. Like, in a lot of ways, I'm doing great. In California, we have a very high cost of living. A lot of people, their salary isn't enough to support what they need to pay for housing and childcare.
Sure.
There are especially cumbersome documentation requirements. And I think that a lot of these strategies that were discussed today can make a pretty solid dent in how we're doing. And also, what about addressing some of the bigger issues? You know, rather than just making it about we need to think differently about how we're coping, it's yes, we need to think differently about how we're coping and what can be done to address the system-wide contributors.
Okay, so in the world of me, we world, you're asking, don't focus as much on me. Let's focus more on world. So who's focusing on world has to go to people like the AMA, the government, the insurance companies, right? And so those ones I'd actually say are making some progress. Of course, AI and taking away a lot of things around administrative summarizing and tasks are another issue. What I want to start with, because I don't really think that's the question, but what I'm really, because what I think is actually people are saying that's the level at which we're going to solve it. And what I really think is that each of us has gotten accustomed to saying we have to stay in this way of doing it because if we don't, we can't support our families, et cetera. And it's the double bind lock that we feel that we don't have freedom or choices that causes like a mass strain. And you're exactly right. Like just saying you need to be more resilient or you need to be more connected. Listen, there's a point at which biology doesn't work, right? And so when you have a cup and there's only so much coffee that can fit in that cup. And so what I say to systems when I go in and I transform companies and systems, what I say to the leaders is, if you're going to tell people to do more with less, it is your job to make them more resourceful, more resilient. That coffee cup can't stay at that coffee cup, right? Because at some point it's overflowing. And so it's an integrated, if I told you what I think the actual problem is, I think it's the consciousness at which every level is functioning. Mm-hmm. I became a partner at Kaiser. It took me 10 years it took me burning out more than once before I would ever stand up and say to myself, I have the courage to pave a new path forward. Right? It's scary. You give up security. You do all sorts of things. That was almost 16, 17 years ago now. So it's scary, and we all have to figure out, I would ask you, why are you doing what, and not you, because you said you're doing great, but whoever the you is, why do you say yes to this? Because that's your part. It's the part you're in control of. You can influence and give decisions and create a we, which I think is really powerful. But it's like on a systems level, we have to either, a nurse, what do nurses do? Nurses have unions, they walk out. What do employees do? They walk out, they force a change, with their cohesion, right? But to say, I actually don't just work on like, hey, like, let's get you your Band-Aid and making you move a little longer. One of the first things I said was, you want a Band-Aid? I'm not your woman. You want to fix the system? You look at it on all three levels. You figure out where you have ability and where you have personal power. Then figure out where you have positional power and where you can influence. But the bigger question is, if you are burning out and you are burning out multiple times, my question to that person is, why do you put yourself last? That is my first question. And my second question is, like, what makes you say yes? Because you're accepting a paycheck for something. So you also need to take accountability. So I say that to the individuals. Then I say to them in a company forum, why did you say yes? Of all the places you could have worked, of all the difference you could make in the world, you said yes to this. Help me understand. And once we realize we're all taking accountability and getting something from this, then it becomes about, have I learned the lessons I've come here to learn? These are bigger questions than can I become more resilient? You see what I mean? And we got to raise our consciousness and our collective consciousness in order for this to change. And so, I mean, listen, I'm one person in my world that did it differently. I don't think that my way is the right way. I think it's one way, right? But each of us has to ask those questions and do things that feel scary if it's really something that's eating and draining us over time. Because it's got to give you something, net gain. Because, listen, bank accounts, relationships, or jobs, nothing can sustain an ongoing net drain. Biology, it doesn't work that way. You're going to get sick, you know? So I think we got to ask ourselves the question, not from a place of make us focus on us and leave everything the same. Ask us why we stay in a system like this. What else do we have to learn here?
That makes sense.
I think, Adrian, what I would add that is along those lines is, so again, this idea of I'm going to write C- notes. I'm going to write what's required for billing or other purposes. The other thing is I'm hired in Department of Psychiatry and Pediatrics, and we went to our chair and said we're being paid at 5% of the national salary for psychologists. And then they all kind of came together and said, okay, well, we need to find more money. But psychiatry departments, our department loses money for the hospital system. So they had to then say, we're actually invested in mental health to fund you all. That's a long story. I'm happy to tell you later. Yeah. But yeah, we had to go to them. Yeah. I think Beth also told me what she was paying her psychologist, and I thought very hard about moving to Buffalo, right? But
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a cool example of how you can take really good care of yourself and your team and notice your early warning signs and also engage in advocacy to address some underlying problem, right? Like if your service line is truly short-staffed, lots of turnover, like it's the self-care piece is one very critical piece and the advocacy piece can add. So.
And I think they build upon each other, right? Because what she just said that is so powerful is, I'm willing to do a C in notes. I took my values, then I prioritized them. Once I took that, I took care of me. Then I said, hey guys, can we come together now? We're at we, because we have leverage together. If they see 5 of us saying we're not being paid enough, that's the we. Now we can change what's happening. So I think the biggest thing is think of it on multiple levels at the same time. And I don't think we have triple vision when we're this exhausted. We have single vision.
And that's where maybe some of the like self-care and coping with burnout can then give you the energy that you need to advocate for the other things.
You bet.
So,
you
It
bet.
took us years for that to happen, right?
okay.
And you know, I couldn't even see burnout. Like I needed someone else to tell me that I was burned out. Like, I don't know that we can do anything anymore, you guys, without we. Like, we's really important because we've been down this path for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
We have another question that reads from Casey. What would you advise to someone who is experiencing burnout because of someone else's burnout? How would you navigate a shared team burnout with one person?
Can you say that question again?
Sure. What would you advise to someone who's experiencing burnout because of someone else's burnout? And how would you navigate a shared team burnout with one person?
Wow. Okay. So with this, like the first words that came to me are codependency. Okay. The second one that came is like, it's when we, you know how you put up the thing about, there's a moral injury or moral values, and then there's your strength, and then there's your vulnerability. This person's strength is that they care so deeply about other people, but their vulnerability is that they're not caring for themselves. So this is healthy boundaries. This is clarity around where I end and another person begins. This is what I can do for you is this, what I can't do for you is this. One thing that's like the biggest thing is I don't think any of us are going to be able to save somebody else from learning their lessons. But my God, we try. Right? We don't want our child, our colleague, whoever it is. And what I'd say here is, what do you need to do? Because if you're drowning, you're not going to help anybody else.
And our next question from Brooke reads, how do you get buy-in from the care team members who don't see the need for self-care for burnout or don't see it as a priority? There's never enough time. So how do you get the buy-in to make the time?
Okay, now this is where power and hierarchy come in. You remember when I was going through all those things? It's like physical, mental, emotional, social, and under social. It's power and hierarchy. I think we have become a society that cares more about profits than people. There is something called conscious capitalism. My boyfriend happens to be the founder of it. But it's basically saying we have to figure out a purpose higher than profits. When we make decisions, we can't make it solely for shareholders. We have to make it for every stakeholder that decision affects. We have to go into our own development of conscious leadership. No matter where you are in your own development, there's a next level. And then we have to create conscious and caring cultures. And Raj wrote the book saying the companies that do this, 28 of them, make 9 times the profit over 10 years than their peers in their industry. But do you see how that's a longer game? It's a longer game. It's not next quarter's earnings. But in 10 years, you have less turnover, happier people, higher productivity, all of these things. Once again, I'm going to say it's consciousness. How are we willing to take a little bit of a hit short term to go longer term? Are we willing to say people, if we invest in our people, they will come up with the innovation and the profits for us? They'll help each other. They'll collaborate synergistically. The question is to me about on what level we're making decisions. So do you remember when I was talking about that in perspective, what I said is rather than digging into my own perspective and doubling down, you ask the question, get curious, not furious. And that's what you're saying, which is, listen, everybody matters and everybody's got to win. That's a higher level of decision making than what do I need now to look good, right? Who can I cut if my budget is not great? Like the idea that you can make budget by just cutting employees and making everybody else figure it out from there, that is not looking at all stakeholders. You know, when you make shared stakeholder decision, that means you say, I'm going to make this. This is the thing we're talking about. These are all the players it affects. How does everybody matter and how does everybody win? That's the goal, right? But here's the thing, I'll leave us on this, but I started to become a person I didn't like. That's the truth about why I left clinical practice. I started cutting corners. I didn't care what the insurance company wanted me to do. I knew what I was going to do for that patient, and I was going to figure out how to get them what they needed. And I started doing things that I didn't like to bypass systems I didn't believe in. And as the moment I looked in the mirror and I did not like the woman looking back at me, because I wasn't following what was going on, and I knew it didn't resonate anymore with me, but I didn't want to leave caring for people, so I had to find a way that it aligned with who I am. And that was a scary move for a daughter of immigrants to give up lifelong security in a partnership. But you know what I had to face? I had to face whether that was more important or was my own moral injury more important, right? And at some point, every person has to come up with the ways that it can work. One of the things I asked to do was move into palliative care, because to me, that has meaning. There's a lot of people who don't think that has meaning. It's when you stop being able to do something for people. I'm like, wow, you have missed the sacredness of what goes on in palliative care. So if you can find a place where you have meaning that you can influence by getting curious, not furious, my God, that is what I'm talking about, for sure. We're playing the long game, guys. We're playing the long game here. But you got to take care of yourself above complaining about the system. You have to. And sometimes it leads us to hard decisions.
I know that we're really out of time. I want to thank Dr. Sangwan for presenting today. I just want to highlight, as frustrating and difficult as all of this is, and changing a system is so complex and so challenging, I think it's really important to acknowledge that the CF Foundation has recognized burnout as a problem. This went from a plenary on mental health last year, where our own healthcare provider, emotional well-being was important, to a symposium in which we could talk about strategies to improve our emotional well-being. And I think what we could do now is advocate that the CF Foundation includes this kind of programming going forward to help us with interventions, because it's clear that burnout is very common and very debilitating among all of us. And so there's a tiny bit of advocacy you could do in saying we need more of this at our conference, more about how to take care of ourselves so that we can do a good job of taking care of our people with CF.
This is called We Influence Squared. That's what she's doing right now. Like, you do have the power if you come together, right? If we do this, then we have the power. And she's moved now from me to we, right? And really kind of mobilizing all of us together, not just us saying this is important, I'm going to write a book about it, or I'm going to give up an afternoon speaking about it because I want to share. Now we're moving it and we're asking you to join us. So.
Thank you all.
Thank you.